Hi, this is Cece Fridland. Welcome to The Home Chef with FocusAL.com. Today we're going to finish our Valentine's Day dinner with a fabulous chocolate cake. Well, we're ready to start our chocolate cake, and since this cake is mostly going to feature the chocolate, it's very important that we use a very good chocolate in this. What I'm using today is El Rey. It's a 61% dark chocolate from Venezuela. This is available seasonally at Earth Fare, which is where I bought these. It comes in this package in these little discs, or what are known as calays. So we're going to put this in a bowl along with just a little bit of butter. That's 2 sticks of butter and a pound of chocolate. When I'm using expensive chocolate, I like to melt it very, very carefully, because if you burn the chocolate, you get to start over and throw all of this away. We don't want to do that. I always use a double boiler, but a double boiler is a little bit of a misnomer. So in this pan, I've got my water. We're going to hit it with the heat and bring it up to a boil. I never put the chocolate on top while there's actually heat under the pan. We'll bring the water up to a boil, set this on top to let it melt, and we'll let the heat coming from the hot water melt it. Meanwhile, while we're waiting that to go, we need to separate some eggs. So this calls for 4 eggs separated. As part of the recipe, we're going to be whipping up the egg whites. So it is extremely important that when we separate the eggs, there can be no yolk in with the whites, or they will not whip up. To do that, I like to use what's commonly referred to as the 3-bowl method. So I'm going to start here and begin to separate out the whites. Lost the yolk there. No problem. We pick it up. All right. That's nice and clean. So we put the yolk in one, the whites in another. In the event that I were to break the yolk, I could just throw this away and I don't have to worry with the whites I've already separated. All right. There we go. All right, so the yolk in one bowl, that white over here. And we are going to use the yolks in with the chocolate, so we do need to save those. And our last egg will separate out. So now we've got the 4 yolks and the 4 egg whites that we'll need later on. I've brought the water in the pan to a boil. We're going to remove the heat from underneath, allow that to settle, and then take the bowl with the chocolate and the butter and set on top, and we're going to allow the residual heat to melt this. So as we're doing this, the heat's coming up through the bowl. So as the chocolate melts, you can see it's kind of pooling here. You want to keep mixing it and pushing the parts that are not yet melted against the hot bowl, because that's how the heat's getting in here. Any mother will tell you chocolate melts before butter. If you've had kids, you know that one for sure. So we want to keep this moving until this is nice and blended and we're ready to add the rest of our ingredients. All right, so the chocolate and butter are almost completely melted. Always make it a habit as you take the bowl off of the heat to wipe the bottom of the bowl. It's not really a problem this time because we've got so much butter in here, but if you're melting just chocolate and any water hits it, it will seize up and become a grainy mass. So you don't want that. So always get in the habit of just wiping the bottom of the bowl. You can see we've got a few chunks of butter left to melt, so those will melt as we're going through here, stirring that in. What we're going to add next is a little bit of flour and a little bit of sugar. So we've got 1½ teaspoons of each. So as I said earlier, this is a very, very chocolate forward cake, and one that I really love because of that, because I'm a chocoholic. All right, so we've got that in. I'm going to switch to a whisk. As you can see, the chocolate and butter are fully melted and it's nice and smooth. At this point, we're ready to add our dry ingredients. So we'll start with the flour and the sugar and bring that in. Whisk that in very well. Next, we need just a little bit of water. So we're going to add 1 teaspoon of water. So I have a little water in a bowl here, so we'll just get a teaspoon out of that into there. Mix that in, loosen that up just a little bit. Now we're ready to add the egg yolks. We're going to add the egg yolks one at a time. and incorporating it completely before we add the next one. So if these will cooperate, there we go, there's one. Beat him in. Okay, and then our last egg yolk. So our chocolate mixture is ready to go. Now we need to go back to those egg whites we separated and get the pan ready. Now we're ready to do the egg whites. So remember the 4 egg whites we separated out before. I'm going to put it in the very clean bowl of my mixer. Again, you need to make sure that there's no fat at all that's in this bowl, so clean it very good. Using the whip attachment, I'm going to put that on here. And get that started. I like to start a little slower and break the whites up and get a little air into them. That'll help them get a little more volume as we go. While the whites are working, we're going to go ahead and prepare our pan. For this, I'm using a springform pan. I like this particular one, the glass bottom. It's a good solid pan. I actually got this through chefscatalog.com. And what we're going to take, a little cooking spray, spray the bottom. All right, tip here, I always do this over the sink. I did it over the floor once. After you slip and fall on that, you'll figure out not to do that. Then I've got this parchment round, and you can cut these yourself out of parchment paper. You can buy them pre-cut. I get all of my parchment products from the Baker's Catalog at King Arthur Flour. I'm going to sit this right in the bottom of the pan here. And the reason we grease the bottom of the pan is because that will now hold on to the parchment. And then we're going to go ahead and spray the whole pan and the parchment down again. And so now our pan is ready for our batter. Now all we need is our egg whites. And so that's why I'm going to go ahead and speed this up just a hair now and wait for them to come up to, we need them at a stiff heat, so we'll wait here for just a minute. So you can see the egg whites are starting to bubble and foam up a little bit. I like to run the mixer fairly slow until we get a little more bubbling, and then we'll hit this into the higher speed and move it up and progress this along a little faster. Okay, so when I'm teaching beating egg whites in the classes, one of the things folks want to know is how far to take them. And it's very easy to underbeat and overbeat. At this point, you can see we've got some foam there, but that's what we call a soft peak. As I move it around, the peak flips around. So that's not quite where we need it for this recipe. So we're going to go ahead and take it a little bit further until we're at the full stiff peaks. Back on, we'll get this going again. And you want to pay attention because it doesn't take long once we reach this point. The problem is if you overbeat, you'll start knocking the air out of the egg whites. And we're working really hard to get a lot of air into the egg whites. That should just about do us. There we go. Stiff peaks. See, it's not rolling over as we do it. In the bowl, when I pick it up, I get the nice peaks there. So that's what we want. Slide this up, slide the mixer over and out of the way. At this point, we're going to bring the chocolate back into the party. So now, as you notice, we've put no leavening agent of any kind into this cake. What's leavening the cake or giving it the rise is going to be these egg whites. So we've got the air in the egg whites, and in the oven, as the air expands, that's what's going to give us the lift. So we're going to start with what we call lightening. This is a folding exercise. I'm going to show you how to do that. But the first step is we're going to do what we call lightening. This chocolate is very dense and difficult to mix into. So we're going to take about a quarter of the egg whites. And the goal here is to just get them in. And I'm not really worried about treating them nicely here. I just want to lighten this whole mixture up so we can fold in the rest of the egg whites. Okay, so there we go. You can see kind of how that's not quite as dense now. So we're ready to take and start folding the egg whites. This is a very important step. So we're going to take about a third of the egg whites, spread it out on top, and the folding is essentially we're going to cut through and roll it over. We're not going to stir anymore. Everything is going to be coming through and rolling over until these are incorporated into the rest of the mixture. So use a good spatula, good wide spatula, and we're just going to continue to do is take a slice down the center and roll it over. All right, let's go ahead and bring in some more egg whites. And this particular cake, I'll go ahead and tell you now, you'll see it when we pull it out and it cools. It's going to rise up. We're going to cook it a fairly short amount of time. It only goes in the oven for 15 minutes. And it's going to puff up, and when you take it out, it's not going to look done. And what's going to happen is the edges are going to set, and the center is going to fall back down, and then we're going to fill that with some chocolate whipped cream to go on top. And that's going to make this a really nice cake. And you can see how the egg whites keep getting into smaller and smaller pieces, and that's exactly what we want. We want to keep the air in it because we need that air. It's very important. Ready now to take our prepared pan. We're going to move the batter into the spring form. Again, using the spatula, get all of it out of the pan. And I have preheated the oven to 425 degrees. I'm going to take this and just kind of swirl it around a little bit to even it up and put it in the oven. 15 minutes, be right back out. As you can see, it's still a little loose in the center, but it's puffed up for us, set on the edges. We need to let it cool completely in the pan before we can move to the next step. So you want to let this cool down completely, and then we're going to come back and put some chocolate whipped cream over the top of it, get it ready to serve. So our cake is cooled, and we're ready to finish it off. We need some lovely whipped cream to go in the top. For whipped cream, we want to keep everything very, very cold. So we put the mixing bowl, the beater, and the juicer. Don't pull the whipping cream that we're using until right when we're ready to do it. So we'll put the bowl onto the mixer. Get our beater in place. We need about a cup of cream to whip up. There we go. So we're going to get this into the bowl. And just like when we did the egg whites a little earlier, we're going to beat this with the mixer until it gets frothy. When it's frothy, we're going to add a quarter cup of powdered sugar and cocoa powder. Now, cocoa powder is pretty interesting. In the last few years, a bunch of different kinds of cocoa powder have shown up. There's two basic types: natural cocoa powder and Dutch process. The Dutch process uses a alkaline to bring the acidity down and also changes the flavor a little bit. This is probably my favorite Dutch process cocoa powder. It's from a French company called Valrhona. I get it at Whole Foods up in Nashville or in Birmingham whenever we're out traveling. We're going to let the whipped cream do that. Meanwhile, we need to depan our cake. So I'm going to just open the spring form, set that in there. I'm going to take my spatula. I'm going to just separate it from the base of the cake plate. Don't worry about the center. We want that. See how it's collapsed in the center? That's all okay. I'm going to grab the parchment. Like that. Okay. So we're going to move this. Ooh, you don't want to do that. Move that onto our serving plate. We'll clean that up here. Just tuck that back in. So the whipped cream has reached the spot where we'll go ahead and add in the powdered sugar and the cocoa powder. Let me get that off so we can get this in the center. So we've got our powdered sugar right in there, our cocoa powder, and again, just like the egg whites, we want to go beat this to stiff peaks. And then we'll just mix it slow to mix that into the cream, and then speed it up. Okay. Let's check where we're at. I'm going to take that off. Just like before. Oh yeah, we're good. That is looking like some good chocolate whipped cream right there. So now we're ready to take this and put it on top of the cake. We got our chocolate whipped cream out of the bowl. We're going to spread this around. Now you can do this ahead and refrigerate the cake. You will want to slice it and let it warm up, about 15 minutes. You don't want to eat this cold straight out of the refrigerator. The flavors won't be as good. So there we've got our, a little bit right smack in the middle there. A little peak right smack in the middle. And we have our cake. Now we're ready to sort that out. The first piece can be a little challenging to get out. There we go. You'll see that the center is nice and moist, almost a little gooey. So you got that nice lift on the outside, and then the egg whites relaxed in the center. Coffee cake's really good. You put this with those others we showed you during February, you've got a great dinner. Trust me, you'll enjoy it. This is CC Fridland, the home chef. FocusAL.com.